Welcome to the LowCarbUSA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
Hal Cranmer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug. It's really a pleasure being here.
Yeah, so you've been an attendee at our, at the very least, our San Diego conference. I'm not sure if you've been to any of the others, but someone kind of brought you to my attention, saying like, hey, you should talk with this guy because he owns and runs a number of homes that have a lot of elderly people in it, and that you're trying to introduce this ketogenic diet, or sometimes even carnivore diet, as you mentioned, to them, and they had a lot of success with that. So I think maybe let's just start with you and how you even are interested in doing this and why you're doing this, and then we can talk down the road a bit about about all these people that you're helping in these homes of yours.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. And I really enjoyed that low carb conference in San Diego. You put on a wonderful show. You had great guests, and I really appreciate getting to go to that. So thank you. I own 4 assisted living homes. They're around the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I've had them for about 8 years. I got into this business sort of as a real estate investor. I wasn't really, I don't have background in elder care and everything. I've got a background in manufacturing, and I was a pilot for a while until 9/11 kind of ended that career. So I really thought of it as more an investment for my family and everything like that. But once I got into it, I really enjoyed it and became a lot more passionate about it. And it's, I guess the low carb part of it, I started out looking around at all the different homes that were in my area and trying to learn how to do this business and everything when I got into it. And I noticed that a lot of elderly people were just sitting in front of a TV, eating terribly, and using medications to try to help their health as much as possible, and sort of thinking that might help. And I think it does more of dampening symptoms than it does really curing anyone. I mean, obviously, we're all going to die someday, but you can have a really good quality of life right to the end. You see it on the internet and TV shows and things like that. Very old people doing very cool things. But a vast majority of them, the last decade or two of their lives are very sedentary, TV watching, in pain, a lot of different chronic conditions, and it hurts them. So I started thinking, how could we help that wouldn't be, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know all the medications, but there's got to be simple things we can do that get people better. So I just started by, let's not do so many desserts. Let's not give them ice cream all the time. Let's not give them, pizza and all this kind of stuff. And let's just find out healthier alternatives. And I noticed people were starting to improve. People were starting to be able to walk again, or just felt a lot better, or the doctor came in and said, hey, you don't really need this medication anymore. And I was like, wow, we can do something here. I also hired a trainer to come in and do exercising with them 4 to 5 days a week, because I hated seeing them sit around. I like to exercise a whole lot, play sports, things like that. And I thought, well, I know that's healthy, so let's try that. So as time went on, I just started reading more, researching more, talking to different people. I went through a vegan phase where I hired some vegan nutritionists and tried that. Not only did it not really do much for the residents, some of them lost a bunch of weight who didn't need to lose weight. And, the nutritionists were making me run all over town getting these weird ingredients in specialty stores. And I just was like, I don't have the time for this. And then my residents and their families were like, hey, if you serve my mom one more salad for breakfast, we're moving to another facility.
Wow.
So I realized this isn't really working. So I went back to, okay, well, let's just feed them kind of healthy stuff. And then I first came across the carnivore diet. I bought some exercise equipment for myself, and the guy who created the exercise equipment wrote a book on, how to exercise with it. So I bought the book, and he very much advocated this carnivore diet as well to help gain muscle and stuff. But as I read more and more about it, it sounded like, hey, this helps clear up some chronic conditions and everything. So I thought this would be great for our houses. So I started talking to people in the houses, and a lot of them were like, well, we're not going to just eat meat all the time. I like some vegetables. I like a salad. So I'm like, all right, there's got to be some happy medium in here. And that's how I came across the ketogenic diet of, okay, we can serve them. It's more about serving low carbs than it is, a specific type of food like the carnivore diet is. And then as I got more into it, I found some cooks and things like, I don't know if you know Maria Emmerich, but her and some others that make very delicious meals, but they're ketogenic. They're very low carb too. So it's a lot easier to convince my elderly population who like good food, why don't you try this food? And I hired some cooks and I trained them, because what I was finding in our homes, the traditional way to do it is have the people who give it, the caregivers, make the meals too. And a lot of them were, after a day of showering these people and dressing them and cleaning them and changing them and, and moving them around and making the meals, they get to the end of the day and they're like, making a can of SpaghettiOs or peanut butter and jelly sandwich or macaroni and cheese sounds very good right now. I don't want to make them a fancy meal. So I thought, okay, let's get them out of it. Let's have them just do care. We'll bring in these cooks. They'll cook. And then we sat down and I went over, this is what I want. I want low carb. I want you to text me it. And so we started doing that. I did have some interest in the carnivore diet, working with, in one of my homes, an insurance company who needed help with people who are very overweight, obese, talking 500-600 pound kind of things. So I said, well, let's try one or two of them in my home. And the first one we brought in lost 230 pounds in 9 months. Second one lost about 50 pounds in 2 months. We're working with him. He's gained a little back. He's cheating a little, so we're working with him. And then the elderly people, we're seeing some really great results. In fact, not only in normal physical conditions, but in mental conditions too. People's depression clearing up, and even people's memories coming back that have dementia and Alzheimer's. So I'm totally sold on it. That's why I came out to your conference, because I think, when you see the results, you really get excited that this is something more than just, a healthy diet that might help you lose a few pounds.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What I'm fascinated about here is that you basically saw them sitting around being unhealthy and went about trying to find a way to change their diet so that they could be more healthy, as opposed to the normal path is where the people themselves have become convinced that this is a brilliant way to do things because it's worked so well for them. And then they go on to help and introduce it to other people, their family, friends, at the institution, wherever it is that they do this. But you seem to have come to arrive there on a different route completely. What about you? Since you've learned about all of this stuff and seen what it's done for them, are you actually following a ketogenic diet yourself, or is this just
I really try to do the carnivore diet.
Oh, you actually try the carnivore? Okay.
I'm not strict about it. I'll have a beer with friends every so often, but I mean, it's maybe once a month or so. I follow it because I like that workout equipment that I found. But I probably have 25 to 50 carbs a day. And most of my meal is animal based, either eggs, fish, organ meat, steak, ground beef, things like that. And I'm 56 years old and I feel like I'm 25. I, 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 I did the vegan thing when we had the vegan thing. I thought I'm not going to ask my residents to do this if I'm not going to do it. And I was like becoming anorexic on that.
Yeah.
So I doing this now, it's easier also to tell people what, when I'm bringing a new family in or something and explaining what we're doing, to go, hey, I feel amazing. I'm doing it, and I really feel good. I mean, it's amazing how I don't get sick. I just feel great. I sleep well. And I wasn't doing all that before.
Yeah. So I just literally 2 days ago come back from a trip to Australia and got a chance to get over to Perth and visit with my family. We've all moved there from South Africa. And my mom is in a pretty bad place with regards to dementia and all sorts of high blood pressure and all sorts of things that she's on. Like my sister, she stays with my sister, and like she jokes like she's a pharmacist, gets so many medications.
Mhm.
Memory's like really, really bad.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking because my brother and sister don't, they just like, we start trying to talk about it and they just basically shut down and blow us off completely. They don't even want to listen. I don't know, it's their engineer brother. What does he know? The doctors are all giving them all these medications and this is what they're living by. Is this
Mhm.
pharmacy cupboard of medications that she has to take through the day, and yeah, it's horrendous.
It is.
But I can't. We just can't get through to them, and I've gone into like real battles with them and got really upset. This time I was determined. We started trying to talk about it once or twice, and they just started talking about something else, and I just left it and just stayed there
Yeah.
for a week. It was great to see my brother and sister. It was great to see my dad, who's a bit older than my mom, but not suffering with those things. He has pain in his hands and knees and stuff like that I'm pretty certain would improve a lot if he started to eat better.
Oh
But
yeah.
he's not memory wise, and he's not starting to develop dementia and stuff like that. Like his mind's still really sharp.
Good.
So it was really cool to be able to talk with him.
Yeah.
But it was just my mom was just so depressing.
Sorry.
It was almost a relief to leave there, after a week,
Yeah.
because I didn't know how much more I could take of that without like blowing up
Yeah.
and saying, "Do you have any idea what this can do?" So anyway,
Yeah.
long-winded. That's not about me. What I was
No, but
trying to get to and got
your case
sidetracked
is,
was, what about medications? Like, do you find that any of these people are reducing the medications that they're on? Because you know that older people are always on a lot of medications or very often, and um, I feel like if they change the way they eat, that a lot of that could be improved. What are
oh
you
yeah.
finding?
Yeah, I've got people who I was at one of my homes last night and a guy's diabetic and he has, I don't know how much you know about diabetes, but they have this thing called a sliding scale. You
Mm,
check your blood sugar and if it's a certain level, you give this many units of insulin. If it's this level, you give this many. If it gets to a really high level, you call the doctor. But if it's a really low level, you don't give any insulin.
right.
And I was going through his insulin thing with my caregiver, and she hadn't given him any insulin all week because his blood sugar is below the threshold where he needs insulin. Um, so I see that one's the biggest one I see, but diabetes is, And even just high blood sugar and insulin resistance is the cause of so many other problems. High blood pressure, cardiovascular, dementia, lots of the
Oh,
chronic
yeah.
diseases you see are a result of insulin resistance. I mean, not directly, but that
It's
contributes.
the underlying cause of everything. Tim Noakes talks
Exactly.
about it all the time. It's like
Exactly.
uh, there's one disease, and that's insulin resistance, and
Yes.
these other chronic conditions are manifestations of insulin resistance because different people respond differently to this state that they're in,
Right.
and some develop different, or they will develop different chronic diseases. Some of them develop multiple, but
Very much so.
it's all has a fundamental underlying cause of insulin resistance. And so, yeah, the more people, I mean, that's what we do. That's why we have these conferences and stuff, to try to teach people about this, and especially the doctors, you know.
Right.
I just wish that I could, because I know that if my mom's doctor told her to do this stuff, she would listen, you know. But if I try and tell her, she's, you know, well, to be honest, you can't even talk to her anymore, because
Right.
we tell her something, and like literally 2 minutes later,
She'll forget
she
it.
doesn't remember anymore.
Right.
You know, I mean, we were sitting there for a couple of hours in the evening, and she would tell us the same thing 10, 12, 15 times
It's
in that
devastating.
time. You know,
Oh,
like
it's
as
horrible.
if like, oh, you won't believe this or whatever, and she'll tell us the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
Um,
It's the worst disease there is. I just can't
yeah,
imagine anything worse than losing your memory.
sure,
That's all you have as you
and
get older.
yeah, and I know that it's like she struggles. I got hit in the head when I was 22 or something, and I have TBI and stuff, and so I know what it's like when I can't. There's words that I know are in my vocabulary, but I just can't find them. You know, when I'm trying to talk sometimes. And she's like that, like, you know, my sister's best friend. Like she can't remember her name, and
Yeah.
especially not her surname. And like in the same conversation, she'll have to keep getting reminded about this person's name 5, 6 times. You
Yeah.
know, as she's talking in the same in the same few minutes that this conversation's happening,
Very
and
much so.
it's just,
It's painful to watch.
you know, it really is. And you know, and then there's all these other medications. I mean, you know, I think was in Boca a lot when Dr. David Unwin came out from the UK to do a talk at our Boca event, and he talked about um, uh, blood pressure and hypertension, and how basically they reverse and get these people, all these patients, pretty much off all their meds for hypertension. And you
Yeah,
mentioned
I see
diabetes.
blood
It's
I see blood pressures come down a lot.
yeah, straight away. And
Hmm.
that, you know, so anyway, I'm ranting on about this. I'm
No, it's
sorry.
quite all right.
Um,
And it's only getting worse. I mean, there's a worldwide epidemic. They're saying, especially with this baby boom generation in the United States, Alzheimer's and dementia rates are just going to skyrocket.
yeah.
And what's really sad is I really think you can prevent it. As long as you take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
You know, I know I know with Alzheimer's that that is one of the diseases that is difficult, if not impossible, to completely reverse. So, and
And
as it goes on longer, like you can see big improvements in people, but it never, especially as it progresses quite far, that
right,
it doesn't
it's
reverse.
like diabetes. You can put it into remission,
Right.
right? We can do our ketogenic diets. Our blood sugars can go down in the normal range. But if you go off it and start eating the sweets again,
Sure.
right back into diabetes.
Yeah.
Same with
But
Alzheimer's.
with Alzheimer's, it's not like it literally, there's damage to the brain that occurs that
Yes,
literally, like with,
yes,
with type 2, you can completely reverse it and get all your meds, and as long as you
right.
stay on the diet,
You're
you
good.
will remain off your meds.
Yeah.
Whereas with
And
Alzheimer's, there's you know,
The brain
there's
does
big
shrink.
improvements, but as far as I understand, at least I haven't heard about cases where they completely reversed it, unless it was very, very early onset.
Yes. So Alzheimer's starts in your 30s and 40s. It's not like you hit
Yeah,
65 and you catch it. It's
exactly.
been developing for years. So when you start having those memory symptoms, you're well
Yeah, the
into
damage has been done
Alzheimer's.
already.
Right. But you
Um,
can, we had a lady who scored in the dementia range, and in 6 months we turned her around and she's moved back home and her
Amazing.
memory's good. And now, just like you said, we're like, you got to stay on the ketogenic diet. You got to exercise. You got to keep
Right.
taking supplements. So Alzheimer's, there's a guy named Dale Bredesen who
Yeah.
might be a really good
Yeah,
one
I'm
to bring
familiar
one
with
of
him,
your
yeah.
conferences. Um, he found that there's like 30 or 40 causes or contributing factors to Alzheimer's. The big three are inflammation, like we're talking insulin resistance. Second one's like some kind of deficiency in your body, some kind of vitamin deficiency. And the third one's some kind of toxic load, like you were working in a factory with all
Right.
kinds of chemicals and breathing those in for 20 years. Um, so you gotta optimize all of that. That's why when you see the medical industry say we've got a new Alzheimer's pill, well, they're testing against one variable that's a problem, whereas there's a whole bunch. You can
Right.
plug that hole, but you can't fix the other ones. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, if you catch it early enough, it can be put into some type of remission. You might still be forgetful and stuff, but you can function.
Yeah.
Um, if you wait, I had people in my homes that have had Alzheimer's for 10, 15 years, like full blown Alzheimer's, and there's just not much we can do, but we can still lower their blood pressure, lower their blood sugar, um, make them healthier that at least the family can hang out with them. And if they're not like completely can't remember anything, they can have some kind of conversation, some kind of quality of life. They can go home with their family for a weekend, go out to a restaurant for a night or something like that and not feel like they're just going to be confined to their room the rest of their lives.
Yeah. So you talked about exercise. I don't know um, if you've listened much to Ben Bokikio. So he was a speaker at the conference he came to in San Diego, but he's done a lot of stuff, and we work with him a lot because his regimen is literally requiring 15 minutes twice a week, which pretty much anybody can do. And
Right.
Seeing amazing results, and he works with people from Olympic athletes. He's been doing it for like 50 years when he was still considered a heretic back in the day. Now people are seeing that what he's talking about is actually valid because it basically he says that it activates the same metabolic pathways as the ketogenic diet does. And
Oh,
so
really good.
when you use them in conjunction with each other, it's just massively powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about stressing those muscles to the point of failure in a short time. And so
Right.
you don't need to do a lot of stuff. Like Arthur Jones is the guy that invented Nautilus and all these fancy machines and stuff. And he had
Yeah.
his 10 commandments about training. And when one of the things that he said was that it took him 20 years to realize that 2 sets was better than 4. And it took
Yeah.
him another 20 years to work out that 1 set was better than 2.
Yeah.
So, and then that's it. You do 1 set, do it nice and slow, get the load so that you fail within 30 to 90 seconds. And then you
Mm-hmm.
move on to the next muscle group and you go through all the muscle groups and you're done.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
I
And
spent
then
half an hour
one of the
working out.
things that I always, because I know the answer, I always, in the Q&A, I always say to him, so if someone else doesn't ask it, I'll say, so, at what point in your life should you exercise to? At what point do you stop? And he says, 2 days after you die, just to make sure that you really did. you know?
Like them.
And so that, I tried to talk to my dad a bit about it while we were there and that, and he's 93 now. And so he, but he leans on the counter and he does some squats and he leans on there and does some push-ups and stuff like that.
Great.
So we just need to get him to push it a little bit further to get to that point where, you know, so you do 20 squats. Yeah, he's a bit tired, but those muscles haven't failed. And it's at that point where they fail
Right.
that, as Ben says, they adapt, your muscles then adapt upwardly. And that's when they actually get stronger and they build a bit of muscle. And even at 90, you can still, if you've been sedentary or you haven't been doing very much, you can actually still build some muscle, muscle fibers.
And what's really a problem for the elderly too is everyone's worried about them falling. So they want them to just sit in the chair all day because then they're not going to fall. But what you're doing is pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to fall downhill and decline and probably fall when they eventually get out of that chair. So yeah, I tell people the way I want people to not fall is we make them strong enough that they don't fall. So, you know, you got to convince them we're going to take them and we're going to do squats. We're going to do stuff with resistance and barbells and things like that. We're going to take them for walks because the sunshine does good things for them too. So it's very hard that, you know, they're tired. They come in with a lot of medications and things like that. So we first of all, we try to exercise them in a group. So there's some peer pressure in doing it. And secondly, it's a nice social thing.
Yeah.
And we don't say, would you like to exercise? We say it's exercise time and you're on the schedule. And if they really fight it, we don't push it or anything, but usually they don't. And you see, once they start getting out of a wheelchair and start walking and they realize I'm getting my freedom back, the motivation starts kicking in, especially when you combine it with diet, like you said. You see a lot better. You see them much more enthusiastic about doing it than, you know, when they first start it, come to you and like, leave me alone, I'm tired.
Yeah. No, that's fabulous, man. You know, I'm loving what you're doing, and you're doing what I wish I could do for my parents, but at least there are people that are benefiting from this. So amazing.
I have a lot of people in my home that are like your family. They're like, my mom's 85, leave her alone. She likes ice cream, give her that. Right. I'm like, all right, you know, I've got to pay the bills. I can't only take the really enthusiastic ones. You know, and my successes are few and far between, but I've sent, you know, in the 8 years I've been doing this, I've sent 7 people home that got well enough that they could live at home. That's brilliant. So, you know, I live for those moments. But it's hard. I mean, if I'm not a medical doctor, so no one's interested in what I have to say, you know, and you know, I can't give them Tylenol without a medical doctor giving me a prescription.
Right.
So, but if there's a medical doctor, I can give them anything. The Department of Health's fine with it. So, it's like, I know people who pick their doctor based on physical attractiveness. So it's very, you know, a lot of those doctors don't get training in nutrition, and they see 50 patients a day. They've got 10 or 15 minutes with you. You know, what's your symptoms? Oh, I know the medication for that. Here you go. Exactly. On to the next one.
Write the script, man, and move on.
And there's the only mention of diet is like one of my managers wanted everyone to have a prescription for the ketogenic diet because it's a special diet. And I was like, but we can give them cake and ice cream and pizza and Taco Bell without a prescription. And she's like, oh yeah, that's, you know, that's what people expect to get. Like, really?
Yeah, no, I mean, what all we're really advocating is the primal diet in the end. You know, I mean, that's how we evolved. So long before there was agriculture and all this crap that people eat.
Yeah, I had a family say, well, that ketogenic diet, that's a specialty diet for people with epilepsy. And you know, I don't want my mom on that. She doesn't have epilepsy. I'm like, well, look at what the people that were eating it have been
Yeah.
doing.
And
None of them have been.
and I don't know, maybe, I don't know whether you do, but sometimes maybe even suggesting that why don't we just try it for a couple of days? Because it's
Yeah,
literally, that's what's so amazing, is that literally in 2 days, they're going to start seeing
results.
differences and improvements and benefits, like
Yep,
real noticeable changes, like
right.
literally in 2 days. And say,
Yep,
okay, let's do this, commit to do this for 4 or 5 days a week. And
yeah,
if you see no differences, then we'll go back to whatever. But just
yep,
try it. It costs you nothing.
yes.
Um, you know,
Well,
and
that's
just if you are going to try it, make sure that you work with your doctor um, to make sure that they titrate those medications when those improvements start to happen, which happen very fast. That
right,
you need to get off some of those medications really quickly, otherwise you're actually going to end up in trouble
right. Oh,
because you're taking
absolutely.
medications when you're not sick anymore. That's effectively what's happened.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to we have to let the doctors know. We monitor a lot of their vitals too. So when we see them improve, we call the
right.
doctor and say, "Hey, just to let you know." Um, and I think it's also calling it a ketogenic diet. Like I've had people say, I don't want to do that, but then I serve them ketogenic food with my cooks that
And they
make
find,
great
yeah,
meals, and they don't even know. And they're
right,
like, that was a great meal. I really enjoyed that. And
exactly.
then they just get better. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah. Like that's why with our clinical guidelines, we were actually, um, the term that's been coined is therapeutic carbohydrate reduction, as opposed to, and we started out calling it restriction, and we're actually changing that to reduction because that's even less ominous than the word restriction. But we don't
Right.
talk about the keto diet or low carb even or whatever. It's just about reducing carbs, making sure you get enough protein. That's for the elderly people, especially, like they need to be eating enough protein.
Oh, yeah.
Add in some good saturated fats, with the meat and the
Right.
chicken and the fish. And the next minute they're like running
Oh,
on
yeah.
on what's it?
I'm, we, we,
Premium
we,
gas, right? They're running on
yeah.
premium.
We went 2 years at one of my homes without losing anyone, which in the assisted living business is unheard of.
Huge,
Usually it's a 6 month time because people bring them when they're near the end.
right?
So you can see the difference. I mean, it saves me a whole lot of money in turnover too. Not that I'm trying to, prolong their agony or anything, but they actually feel better for a time. We had a
Right.
guy get well enough. He was 98 years old. He went on a cruise with his family.
Oh, that's
Um,
brilliant.
yeah, we actually lent him a caregiver and they paid for the cruise. And he came back just grinning from ear to ear. Couldn't be happier, and
Amazing.
he spent the previous 10 years in various assisted living homes and things like that. So
Yeah. And
it's
not only did he have a good time, but he's going to remember that too.
right.
So that he's
Yeah,
got those
actually
memories still,
he
that,
passed away 6 months later. I mean, he was 98, but
yeah, he
but
he
he's
had he
still,
had those memories for
what a
that
way to
time.
go. Right. What a way to go.
Yeah, super.
So yeah, so I'm hoping more and more of this catches on. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people. Like, keep doing what you're doing. It's wonderful. And I will. And
Yeah.
it's just, I love people like you who are spreading the word more and more, and people are learning more and
Yeah.
more.
And maybe you'll get to the stage where people send their parents to you because they want them to get on this diet to get
That's
healthier,
what I'm
get
hoping.
better, and improve their days that they have left. Um, there's doctors and stuff like Brian Lenskes, for instance. He's got moved into this um, uh, primary care practice of his, and pretty much all his patients are coming to him to help them with this metabolic health dietary intervention. He
Yeah.
doesn't, he's literally at a point where he doesn't need to or take patients that are not on board. You know, he's got enough, and people know about it, and you know, if there's anybody that wants an idea about a doctor to go to, if they're listening to us and they're saying, okay, well, who do I go to? If it's in the San Diego area, it was like, go to Brian, you know?
Yeah.
And all his patients are telling their friends, and if they see how much healthier they're getting, and then they send them to him as well. So, you know, his entire practice now is all
That's great.
People on board. Maybe, you know, hopefully down the road that's what your homes might become like.
That's what I'm hoping for.
That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah. And you know, I want to be able to say, this is what I do. If you want to just do the cake and ice cream thing, there's plenty of other assisted living homes.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. And if you've got enough people banging down your door to come and do it, then you're able to say that. You say,
well, yeah, and it's going to make it a lot easier because they're going to support each other rather than
it's going to be like a built-in AA.
Yes, that's a good way to say it.
Everybody's going to be supporting each other and talking them out of cheating when they're thinking about it and stuff like that, you know.
As well, it's
if everybody's on it, then you're able to not have any of that crap in the house.
Right.
So that makes it easier for people to adhere to as well, because it's not even that temptation to go to the cupboard or the fridge and grab something that they shouldn't be eating because it's there, because other people in the house do eat it, you know.
Very much so. Exactly. Cool. Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Hal. Well, it's been a pleasure, man. I love having like conversations like this. Sorry that I went on a bit about my parents, but
no, I hear those stories.
Literally 2 days ago, I got back, so I'm still pretty raw.
It's heartbreaking, and I feel sorry for you, and I feel sorry for all the families that go through it. It's horrible, but we're trying to change it.
Sure, and you know, I don't know. I'm going to send this to my brother and sister. This recording, maybe this one will get through to them and make them realize that there's so much that they could be doing for her if they would just listen. You know?
I hope so. I hope I can help in any way, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or anything.
Are we going to see you in San Diego next year?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Okay,
I'll be there.
We'll see you then. I look forward to it.
All right, sounds great.
Man.
Thank you so much.
Sure. You've been listening to an episode of the Low Carb USA podcast. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/lowcarbusa.